We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are actually on the last part of the last chapter. So we are in book 3, chapter 4. Sorry, chapter 2. We started last week on question 10-12, Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory. We read it, commented, but we are going to go back to it because I will ask Philip to read it to start, and then we read 10-13 also, and then we comment on both, because it's better if we go through it again. It's part of the discussion, and it's the first question of the item. This is the last item on the Spirit's book. Okay. Okay, Philip.
Are there any specific places in the universe set apart for the joys and sorrows of spirits according to their merit? We have already answered this question. The joys and sorrows of spirits are inherent to their degree of perfection. Each spirit finds the principle of its happiness or unhappiness in itself. As spirits are everywhere, there is no enclosed or confined place set apart for either one or the other. As for incarnate souls, they are more or less happy depending on how advanced their world is. Does this mean that heaven and hell, as people have imagined them, do not exist? They are only symbols. There are happy and unhappy spirits everywhere. But as we have also told you, spirits of the same order are together by sympathy. When they are perfect, they can meet wherever they like. A fixed place for rewards and punishment exists only in the imagination of human beings. It stems from a tendency to materialize and define things of which one cannot grasp the infinite essence. Question 10-13. What should we understand as purgatory? It is a state of physical and moral suffering, marked by a period of atonement. It is usually upon the earth that God affords you the opportunity to experience your purgatory and atone for your mistakes. Purgatory is a figure of speech that signifies the state of imperfection of spirits who need to atone for their faults until they attain happiness by achieving complete purification. It is not a specific place. Purification happens through several reincarnations. Consequently, purgatory consists of the trials of physical life. Okay,
so here, when the Spirit gives us the concepts of heaven and hell and purgatory, first we need to start, where does this come from? The concepts of heaven, hell, and purgatory comes from the church beliefs and teachings that depending if we behave badly, we behave well, or we are not as well or not as bad, we can find ourselves in different places. So according to the church, if we behave in a very saintly, in a sense, way, we end up in heaven after the death of the physical body. If we commit any mortal sins, again, there are two types of sins: the mortal sins and the I forgot the name in English of the other sins that are not mortal sins. So if you commit mortal sins, you go to hell. If you commit the other type of sins that are not mortal sins, you go to purgatory. The mortal sins are the one associated with the seven deadly sins. Yes, gluttony and
yes, that was deadly sins.
Sorry, what's it, Paco?
7 deadly sins are correct.
Deadly sins, exactly. So I don't remember them at all, but I know that gluttony is one of them. Avarice, I think, is another one of them, and so on and so forth. Anyway, these are mortal sins. If you commit any of those sins, you go to hell. If you commit the other sins that are not mortal, you go to purgatory. Anyways, these are all the church definitions that we have carried with us for centuries, and Spiritism brings a different concept, that heaven, hell, and purgatory are states of mind. And actually, as I mentioned last week, the Pope, before the last one, John Paul II, said that heaven and hell are states of mind. So the church, the Catholic Church, coming to the same conclusion that Spiritism has told to us 150 years ago. And again, if we think of them as mental states, we can think of situations like when we are in a happy place, going through happy events and happy state of mind. You know, people will say, I feel like I'm in heaven. This place looks like heaven. This experience was heavenly, right? So by the expression, we understand that it can be a state of mind and should be. And the same way, hell, right? So, you know, when you are swallowing guilt, or you are living a very difficult experience, bad experience, or you are in a place that everything is falling apart around you, there is the expression, a living hell, I'm living in hell, or this is hell. And again, you're not really there, it's just a state of mind. Now, purgatory. The church created the concept purgatory lately when people start questioning about children, right? Children that were born and died before they even got baptized or they even received the communion. They haven't had any time to do good or bad. Where did they go? And the church created the concept of purgatory, and then decided that everyone that was not good or not bad would wait in purgatory for the final judgment. Right? With the final judgment is something that comes at the end of times, and we are all going to be judged according to our deeds, and we are going to be sent to heaven or hell. Spiritism doesn't follow any of these beliefs. These are all states of mind that we carry with us here and back to the spiritual world. So the Spirit tells us that these are only symbols, that there are happy and unhappy spirits everywhere. We go to the spiritual world and we find ourselves surrounded by spirits that vibrate at the same level that we vibrate. So we are reunited with spirits that vibrate at the same level. And if we are consumed by guilty, we are going to find ourselves surrounded by spirits also consumed by guilty. And that's what we call the umbral or the lower zones in the spiritual world. If you are, you did everything that you are supposed to do according to our level of evolution. We all made our mistakes, but nothing serious, just our normal mistakes, and we evolved a little bit, and we did our part to live a fulfilling life. We can find our place in the spiritual world, surrounded by spirits that are similar to us, in a place like Nosso, for instance, that is described in the book of André Luiz, or any other spiritual colonies that exist around the world. Organized places, right? I normally I say that Nosso is the first level of organized place that you find in the spiritual world. And we're going to talk a little bit later in this this item on the different levels that we find ourselves in the spiritual world. But we spoke a little bit about that last week also. So this week, it's very interesting because the explanation that the spirits give to us of purgatory is that is a state of physical and moral suffering marked by a period of atonement. And it happens on earth. So the spirits are telling us that purgatory happens when we are incarnated on the struggles that we are facing now in our physical life. A state of imperfection, Kardec says later, of spirits who need to atone for their faults until they attain happiness. So every incarnation is, as Kardec says, here is a purgatory. Life in the physical world, the trials of the physical life consists of purgatory. Again, this is a definition that we don't need necessarily to embrace because we can have many different definitions of life in the physical plane. But what's important is to understand that it's a state of physical and moral suffering that can be, if it's physical, we are incarnated. If it's moral suffering only, we are in the spiritual world. Even if many spirits will complain of physical ailments in the spiritual world because they don't fully understand that they no longer have a physical body, but the suffering associated with the physical body that they had still present in their conscience, and they reflect that. We see that many times on our mediumship meetings on Mondays that we speak with suffering spirits. So the important here is to understand heaven, hell, and purgatory as states of mind, as concepts, okay? Not physical places. Okay? Questions? Paco, your question, asking something?
No.
Okay, you moved. All right.
No, just one question. So if you got the mortal sins, lust and greed and rage, gluttony, if you commit those sins, then you go to hell.
According to the church, yes.
According to the church. Okay. And if you got the venial ones, then they're not so hard, the venial sins, where do you go?
Venial, right?
Venial. Yeah, where do you go?
I forgot the word, and I'm just I wanted you to remind me of the word. So venial, yes.
So that's the word. Where do you go?
You go to purgatory.
You go to is there purgatory here for the venial ones?
Yes. You are not bad enough to go to hell, so you go to purgatory. According to the beliefs of the church.
According to church, yeah. I'm trying to go back in time as I learned that. Okay.
And it's interesting because depending on the church, the Catholic or the different Protestant churches,
yeah,
they explain differently your state. I mentioned last week I was talking to someone that is Church of the Latter Saints, right? And they believe they stay in a sleep state in the spiritual world until the final judgment. Right?
Oh yeah, the ones from Utah. Yeah.
Yes, the Latter Saint. Yeah, and so it's interesting because there are different understandings of what happens to us in the spiritual world, and I think that if you go to the rational line of thought, again, spiritism makes sense, right? Because you go back to the spiritual world, you don't change anything. Your imperfections still are with you, your qualities are still with you. You go back to the spiritual world, you stay around the spirits that think like you and feel like you, have the same inclinations, and then you continue your evolutionary path there in the spiritual world, waiting for the next incarnation.
let me. This is what I think. Am I snobbish in believing that to be a spiritist? I don't know how to phrase this. I really don't know how to phrase this. I'm someone who likes language so much. But my point is that to be a spiritist, you journey into some type of critical thinking.
Yes.
Okay. Most people are not into that.
A lot of people are not into that.
Yes.
I'm not saying most, but let's say a lot.
A lot.
Yes.
I'm not into that. So that's they're given formulas and they're given recipes and they're given it's much better to be given.
Yeah.
Rather than to sit down here and question these things about. So I don't know. It's
yeah.
Am I snobbish in thinking that way? Am I kind of?
No, I think that Spiritism challenges you. Spiritism challenges you to study and to try to improve. Teaches you how to improve, but giving you logic and reason behind the explanations. Right? There is nothing that doesn't have an explanation. Maybe we don't know the explanation because we haven't had the evolvement or the capacity of understand, but there has to be an explanation. Nothing is a dogma. Nothing has to stay hidden according to Spiritism. But what you find in the other religions is a lot of dogmas. We were talking here before the class of one of the most knowledgeable speakers in Brazil, and he comes from a very poor family, and he studied to be a priest. He went to seminar, and then because he didn't have any money, he ended up being expelled from the seminar. And then he found out about Spiritism, and he's very intellectual. He knows a lot. Nowadays, he speaks several languages, including Aramaic and Hebrew that he learned. Wow. And he was telling his story. He said when he found out about Spiritism, he was still very religious, very Catholic. So he would go to a Spiritist center on Thursday and Friday, and on Sunday he'll go to church to confess that he sinned going to the Spiritist center.
I like that.
That's great. Sorry.
Yes, so he said he did that for a very long time. This is Severino Celestino. Yeah, he did that for a very long time until he eventually he reached the conclusion he didn't need to go to the Catholic Church no longer. But you see how the church influence. It's very difficult for us to get rid of it. Because it's incarnations and incarnations that we've been brainwashed, or these dogmas are imposed on us. So it's not easy for us to move away from it. And what normally happens is that people abandon it completely, right? So if people stop believing in God, stop believing in anything related to spirituality. And when Spiritism appeared in the middle of the 19th century, it was really to try to bring these people that were both disbelievers and people that were frustrated by the impositions of the church, to bring something of a spiritual nature that made sense. And that's what the Spiritism has been built on, right? Bringing instructions from the spirits. Okay, just starting that there is a survival of the soul. We go back to the spiritual world and we communicate with the spiritual world. That's how Spiritism came about. So you can imagine that these concepts of that Spiritism brings to us in heaven, hell, and purgatory. Nowadays, we can talk about it, and a lot of people will think that makes sense. But you can imagine this in the middle of the 19th century. It caused a lot of backlash burning of books and persecutions and things like that, right? So, but yes, for you to really go deep into spirit, you have to want to challenge your intellectual abilities and your moral evolution, because spiritism challenges you on both sides, on the intellectual side and on the moral side.
Now I wonder, I think that lots of people, because I don't want to say most, a lot of people are not ready for it.
Yes, that's why you have so many religions that people are comfortable with religions imposing on them what they want and what they should do, and people that feel that are happy to pay to the church to get rid of their sins. The external, because most of us, we would love to have someone else solve our problems. We don't want to solve our own problems. We want the world, someone out there to solve our problems, right? And Spiritism calls you to take care of your own problems, to deal with your own issues. And not everybody wants to do that, are interested in doing that. So it's challenging, yes.
It's quite interesting because in self-help groups, it says that self-help is for people, not for people who need it, it's for people who want it.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm kind of establishing a parallelism with Spiritism, because here we are studying, asking questions, pondering, is this, why that? Not many, you don't want to say most people, okay, lots of people are not into that.
Oh, yeah. There are many people that are only concerned about their physical life in the physical world. They pay no attention to spirituality and they are not interested. But I heard a phrase from Max Planck this week that I loved. That he said that science evolves from funeral to funeral.
I like that.
Yes, meaning, right? All people that oppose the evolution, they're going to go back to the spiritual world eventually, and evolution will happen because people that are growing, that get used to the evolutions, talking about science, right? And they are not opposed because it's part of their life, part of their progress. So, I was thinking about that, and I think it can apply much beyond science also, right? You are to believe in the spiritual world, you just need funeral after funeral, right? Because we are all going to go back there. Carol, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. We often use the term indulgence. In this case, regarding the church, had a different terminology, well, actually a similar terminology, maybe indulgences, in which there would be payments to be made to a church in order for the church to be the intermediary for them. I wonder if you could maybe elaborate a bit on that, because I think the two terms are quite different.
Yeah, indulgence in Spiritism, there is, what is the number of the question? I don't remember. Indulgence, forgiveness, and
that's the definition of charity and equality.
Charity,
benevolence, right?
Benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness. That indulgence means to accept the mistakes of others and to
be patient and tolerant.
To be patient and tolerant with the difficulties of others. Indulgence that the church used in the Middle Ages was something that you pay the church for your sins to be forgiven and for you to buy a place in heaven, which is a very, interesting way of making money for the church, one of the many ways that they made money. And again, if you think about that, if you reflect on that without criticizing it, is our human nature way of buying someone to solve our own problems, right? So you make a mistake, you don't want to face your own mistakes, you pay God through the church for you to be forgiven from your sins and to go to heaven, right? That was the indulgence of the church that they sold. It's different from the word indulgence that it's used nowadays. The true meaning of the word is different.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. It's kind of ironic in a way.
Yes, it is.
It is. Great. Thank you.
It's funny because I heard that yesterday. I was watching a program and someone asked the question, exactly the same question on indulgence and the definition. Yeah. Nothing happens by chance. Here we are.
Yeah, and it actually, becoming more familiar with spiritism, it took me a while to sort of sort those out. I wasn't as comfortable with that word, but I have a better understanding now, so it works. Thank you.
Yeah, again, some concepts, when you read of Purgatory here, right? That Kardec says is a figure of speech that signifies the state of imperfection and happens through several incarnations. So he's saying that purgatory is what we go through in our physical life, right? So this is completely different from the notion of purgatory that we bring from the church in several different incarnations. So it may not be easy for everyone to accept that. That's why I said, these are words and definitions, and we don't need to call it purgatory if we don't feel comfortable with it, right? So again, any word that you don't feel comfortable with it, put it aside and wait, because eventually we will come back to that, right? Like Kardec said, it's better to reject 10 truths than to accept one lie, because truth will be truth always. So we will come back to us, even if we reject it now. But if we embrace a lie, it can become very difficult to get rid of it and to move away from it. It can cause a lot of damage for our evolutionary path. So that's why, if you reject the truth, put it aside, it's not going to harm your path. You're just not prepared, right? If I tell you that 2 + 2 is 4 and you are not comfortable with that, wait, eventually you learn that 2 + 2 is 4, but it's not going to affect. That's the idea behind what Kardec said, and it took me a long while to understand what Kardec meant. In the beginning, I couldn't understand how we would reject 10 truths to accept one lie. I thought it was a little bit too much, but now I understand. Again, with our learning and evolution, you understand better the concepts and get more comfortable with it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's move on.
1014. Why do spirits whose speech reveals them to be superior answer questions from serious individuals about hell and purgatory according to the common beliefs? They speak in a language that is understandable to the people who pose the questions understand. When these individuals are deeply immersed in preconceived ideas, the spirits avoid interfering with their convictions. If a spirit were to tell a Muslim without proper precautions that Muhammad was not a true prophet, it would be poorly received. That is understandable for spirits who want to educate us. How is it that others, when questioned about their situation, reply that they are suffering the tortures of hell and purgatory? When they are inferior and not completely dematerialized, they retain some of their earthly ideas and describe their impressions using terms that are familiar to them. Their state allows them to attain only a very flawed view of the future. This is why errant spirits, or those recently freed from their physical bodies, often speak in the same manner as they did during physical life. Hell means a life of extremely difficult trials, characterized by uncertainty with regards to improvement, while purgatory is a life of trials embarked upon with the certainty of a happier future. When you experience intense pain, do you not say that you are suffering as a cursed soul? The expression is only a figure of speech.
So there are two parts in this question here, and both deal with the communications from spirits, right? And the first part, we mentioned several times, right, that the spirits, they have to adapt their messages to our level of understanding and evolution, right? It's not that they are going to lie to us, because an evolved spirit will not lie to us, but they have to adapt their instructions and their messages to our level of evolution. So if a spirit is going to speak to a community that have a very deep belief in something, and the spirit comes and says something contrary to their beliefs, immediately the spirit, they will reject the teaching or the words of the spirit and will lose an opportunity for learning, right? Because if it's an evolved spirit, it's an opportunity for learning. So they will adapt their messages to the public they are talking to, right? So you think of we talked about the Spirit's book many times. The Spirit's book talk about God punishing us or God forgiving us, and we mention many times that God does not punish, God does not forgive, because God is perfect. God doesn't need to punish or forgive. It's just that the deviation from the natural laws or the following of the natural laws that will give us consequences, positive or negative. But it's God created the natural laws. So the laws are perfect, and we, following or not following, are the ones that create consequences. But in a figurative way, is God punishing us or rewarding us because we are following or not following the natural laws? So again, the spirits were bringing so much new things here with Spiritism in the Spirit's book, that to start also bringing the notion of God's being perfect and not punishing, it will be a little bit too much. In my opinion, again, this is my opinion. That's why they decided not to bring the concept and continue using the words God punish, God doesn't punish. Now, when we're talking about less evolved spirits, suffering spirits, and that we have in our mediumship meetings, or sometimes send messages, and Kardec has many of them in the book Heaven and Hell, right? They are going to reflect the state of mind that they are in. So a spirit, let's say, we were talking about the religions, right? The spirit that believes that after their death, they are going to find themselves in heaven, hell, or purgatory. Whatever they find themselves in the spiritual world, if they carry their beliefs, they are going to believe that they are in hell, heaven, or purgatory. And if they communicate, they're going to describe their experience as being in that place. They don't know anything better. They don't know anything different. So if they are struggling in a place surrounded by other suffering spirits in the lower zones, in the umbral, and they come to give a communication, they can say that I'm living in hell, or I'm surrounded by hellish spirits, or this is purgatory, everybody's moaning and complaining, and I imagine that I'm in purgatory. And so if you don't know better, you're going to describe what you are feeling, right? The same way we describe our feelings here incarnated through people that write books or have conversations with psychiatrists, psychologists. You tell your feelings. It's what you are feeling. It doesn't guarantee that it is real, but it is for you. It's what you are feeling. And these spirits, you cannot tell them that it's not real. It is real for them. They are suffering. They are struggling. Now, the objective, if you have an opportunity to have a conversation with the spirits, is to make them understand that it is a temporary state and they can change it with their change of behavior, attitude, vibrations, like André Luiz was able to receive assistance when he sincerely asked for help in the beginning of the book No Solar. So, the explanation by the spirits here is exactly that, right? Communications from the spirits have to be first, on one side, adapted to the public that is receiving it. On the other hand, on the spirits that are suffering spirits, it will be a reflection of their mental state and their own beliefs and prejudices. So they are going to reflect what they are experiencing. Okay. Questions, comments here? Okay. 10:15.
What should we understand as a tormented spirit, an errant or suffering spirit, uncertain of the future, and to whom you may provide assistance that it often requests by contacting you in its attempt to obtain relief?
Okay, so according to Spiritism, an errant spirit is a spirit in the spiritual world that is between incarnations. Until you no longer need to reincarnate, that you finish your progress and become a perfected spirit, you are an errant spirit. A suffering spirit is a spirit struggling with their own evolutionary path, with their own issues, a tormented spirit, right? A spirit that is uncertain of the future and that is requiring our assistance. And that's what, again, when Kardec is receiving the spirits book, is the beginning of the communications from the spirits. When he's receiving, the spirits are giving communications to the medium's book, is also the beginning, and he's receiving mostly communications from the spirits, guiding and providing instructions. Now, when he starts publishing the Spiritist Review in 1858, is when he starts receiving some messages also from suffering spirits that eventually will be part of it, will become the book Heaven and Hell in 1864. So, here, the spirits are telling Kardec, you may provide assistance that it often requests by contacting you in its attempt to obtain relief. So they are giving the seeds of what would become nowadays most of the mediumship meetings that we have in spiritist centers, which is to provide assistance to struggling spirits, suffering spirits, right? In Spiritism, that's the objective of most mediumship meetings in spiritist centers. You have meetings of disobsession, meetings of rescuing spirits, and you have meetings, of course, of communications from spirits for more evolved spirits. But most of the work that is done today in mediumship meetings is a work of rescue or disobsession, which is addressing these suffering spirits. Okay?
But I think that if you go to the suggestion of Kardec, go see question number 664, I think it's actually worth to take a look at it, because it expands that assistance beyond spiritism and beyond mediumship. It's prayer. And that's universal, that you don't have to believe in mediumship, that you don't need to go to a spirit center. I think it's worth taking a look at that answer from the spirit on 664.
Let's go there. Read for us, Philip.
Is there any point in praying for the dead or suffering spirits? If so, in what way can our prayers alleviate or shorten their suffering? Do they have the power to escape God's justice? Prayer has no effect on God's designs, but the spirits for whom you pray are consoled by your prayers because you are showing them proof of your interest. They are comforted by the kindness of those who are compassionate towards their pain. Your prayers may also motivate them to repent or to do everything within their power to become happy. This is how you may shorten the term of their suffering, provided that they support your action by that of their own wills. This desire for betterment, motivated by your prayers, attracts higher spirits who come to enlighten them, console them, and give them hope. Jesus prayed for the sheep that went astray, and in so doing, showed that you, in order to have a clear conscience, must do the same for those who desperately need your prayers.
You see, it's interesting, the first phrase of this answer. Prayer has no effect on God's designs. So the spirits are really telling us here, right? God doesn't condemn, God doesn't forgive. There's no need to pray for God to change anything. Again, prayer has the effect of helping first and foremost the one that prays, right? Because it elevates the vibration, connects with the higher spirituality, but also sending these vibrations of love and of compassion, thank you, to those that are in need. They are going to receive also. We're going to be studying this Sunday here on the Gospel According to Spiritism. We are studying prayer, and we are going to go deeper into prayer. If you want to join us on Sunday at 11 a.m. We are studying the second Sunday of the month is the Gospel, and we are in the last chapter, which is prayer, right? So we started a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to continue. So again, and when we are trying to help and assist our loved ones that have gone back to the spiritual world, that are suffering here in the physical world, prayer is the most effective means that we have to help and assist those in need. But again, prayer here means sincere prayer coming from the heart. It's not memorized words that comes out of our brain and not of our heart. And that's difficult for us to learn and to fully embrace it, right? We are, again, going back to reincarnations of reincarnations, that we learn to pray, repeating words and saying the same words over and over again. And, you are there praying and you are thinking about, dinner or other things, or how your neighbor is not very well dressed, or things like that, right? So you see here how, the explanation of prayer that comes from the heart, it comes from what you really feel and have, right? And, again, Mother Teresa, you don't need to say anything. God doesn't say anything. That's the true prayer, communication between her and God. So again, Let us, if we need to practice, because it doesn't come naturally for most of us. We need to practice, but you know, practice, with practice we learn. Okay. Thanks, Elmo. Go back to almost the end. And 16, the concept of heaven.
How should we understand the concept of heaven? Do you think that it is a place like the Elysium of Greek mythology, where all good spirits are crowded together haphazardly with no other care than that of enjoying passive happiness for eternity? No. It is universal space. It is the planets, the stars, and all the higher worlds where spirits enjoy all their faculties fully without having to experience the ills or misfortunes of material life, or the suffering that is characteristic of inferiority.
Okay, so the concept here that the spirits bring of heaven, first they say it's not what you think of the Elysian of Greek mythology, right? The concept of a perfect spirit is a spirit that works incessantly, enjoying perfect happiness. We don't understand the concept. It is a foreign concept for us that are inferior spirits, but we can imagine that it doesn't make much sense for spirits that reach perfection to be idle forever, right? If we get bored here when we are doing nothing after a certain time, how can we imagine that perfect spirits would stay without doing anything for all time, right? We all wish to go on vacations, but we want vacations that have an end, right? Because if we have endless vacations, we get bored. So we have to understand the concept of heaven as a place where spirits are perfectly happy, working incessantly. But again, the work is different from the concept of work that we understand here, that makes you get tired, makes you get sometimes frustrated. It's a work that benefits others 100% of the time, and where they fully enjoy it. I think that's as much as we can grasp this concept, right? They work in direct connection with God, perfect spirits. We think about Jesus, the governor of the planet. We can imagine that every planet, star, universe, and galaxies have their own responsible governors, or whatever you want to call them. And these are all perfect spirits, a community of Christs throughout the universe, which are just spirits that reach perfection, like we all will reach one day, and we'll be all together with God, working directly with God. Again, because it's something that none of us has ever been there and reached, our description is limited by our own lack of words and lack of understanding. So we can imagine, but with very limited capacity of imagining it. Okay? Right? Questions, comments here? We're going to stop here because we are very close to the end of the book, and I think next week we should leave the last questions for next week, and then talk a little bit more about the conclusion of the book. And then we have Thanksgiving the other day, so we finish we start again in December or after Thanksgiving. Okay, so we're going to start 1017 next week, and 1017 talks about fourth and fifth heaven, these concepts that still a lot of people talk about it, different dimensions in the spiritual world. So we need to have a little bit more time to talk about it. So it's not worth talking in 5 minutes. Okay, so we'll continue next week. So this weekend we have a very special lecture on a Saturday. Is our friend Álvaro Mordejai. He's going to talk about the gospel, safe path to find the joy of living. In the middle of the world's challenges, numerous questions can render us immobile. During this talk, we'll present the teachings of the gospel as a pathway to discovering the joy of life. For those that do not know Álvaro is Jewish, was an Orthodox Jewish that found Spiritism and has been teaching a lot of the Old Testament to Spiritists and giving a lot of knowledge to Spiritists on the Jewish tradition and the Jewish beliefs and everything else, and how Spiritism, how first Jesus and Christianity came from Spiritism, the connections it has to Hebrews and the prophets and everything, and how Spiritism evolves from that. So he already gave a couple of presentations, and including to us here in SGNY. So this is Saturday, 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page or through the International Spiritist Council YouTube page. Okay. Sunday, as I mentioned before, we are studying the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the chapter of prayer at 11 a.m. The book club on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. is finishing Prelude to a Divine Kingdom. I believe they have 1 or 2 weeks left in the book. And again, as I mentioned, in 2 weeks is Thanksgiving, so we'll be closed for Thanksgiving, which is on a Thursday. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer, please?
Oh, certainly. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elmo. And Philip, thank you for reading this evening. And thank everyone who is attending this evening for our study of the Spirit's book. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful again to be together as brothers and sisters for our study of the Spirit's book. Our topic of discussion this evening, Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory. Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory are not physical locations. They are concepts from the prior church with a capital C. They are states of mind with particular vibratory rates. There are spiritual colonies in the spiritual world. The word purgatory can occur as a state of atonement on earth due to trials and physical sufferings. It is with the hope or certainty of improvement or a better future. God created the natural laws which we can align to or reject. We will reflect what we are experiencing, whether it be good in the middle way of the path or on the negative side. An errant spirit is in between incarnations. Heartfelt and sincere prayers may give hope, comfort, and compassion to those who need assistance in the spiritual world. Perfect spirits are continuously working for the benefit of others and serve in close connection to God. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, the directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and those who are participating. We pray for inner peace, and certainly now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for SGNY, our center, and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, expand, and be protected each hour, day and night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. And may we go forth reminding ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity. So be it.